evening, listeners. Welcome to the Grihastha Vision Team seminar, Energizing Each Other, the Give and Take of Energy in a Relationship. My name is Akanta Bhakti Davidasi, and this is my wife, Yarunath Das. And anyway, I'm Yarunath Das, and this is my wife, Akanta Bhakti Davidasi. And we are going to be your hosts for the evening. So welcome from Facebook and from Zoom. Just for those of you who aren't quite sure what the Grihastha Vision Team is, it's a grassroots volunteer group of Krishna devotees who are mostly mental health or educational professionals. Their mission is to provide education and resources to support married couples, prospective couples, and anyone interested in spiritual married life, primarily but not exclusively in North American ISKCON communities. So tonight, we're going to be discussing the giving and taking of energy within a relationship. And our focus this evening is with two of the couples that are on the Grihastha Vision Team. We'll get to them in just a minute. But I want to tell you that we're going to be taking your questions. I mean, we will have questions for the panelists, but at any time through the next hour and a half, you can submit your questions by chatting them. If you're on Zoom, chatting them directly to us in the chat box, or if you'd rather use ask an anonymous question, then the Google form link is posted right now. Leela Prabhu just posted it in the chat box. You can click on that link, and that'll take you to a form where you can submit questions anonymously. I believe Leela is also going to post that link for our Facebook paisans, our friends on Facebook. So those are two ways you can get your questions to us, your friendly hosts. All right. So let us get to our wonderful panel. As I said, there'll be two couples that will be talking about this topic tonight and answering your questions. You should know this about the Grihastha Vision Team in general. The members of the GVT are senior devotees with diverse clinical qualifications. Together, they're co-authors of Heart and Soul Connection, a devotional guide to marriage, service, and love. More on this book later. It's gold, believe me. Specific information on the services that the GVT offers and complete bios of its members may be found on the GVT website, which is vaishnavafamilyresources.org. And there it is again from the wonderful Leela, vaishnavafamilyresources.org. Okay, Akanta.
Partha Das and Uttama Devidasi are both disciples of Srila Prabhupada. They've been married for 50 years and are trained in marital education.
Our second couple tonight are Braja Leela Davidasi and Akavira Das, both disciples of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. They've been married for 28 years. Between them, they are trained in hospice, holistic health, pastoral care, conflict resolution, mediation, nonviolent communication, and Taekwondo. Minus the Taekwondo. Okay. So, just once again, please ask your questions at any time through the evening. You can do it now, you can do it later. Direct chat them to us, or click on that link and you can submit the questions anonymously.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to start off with our questions. And our first question is going to be to Partha Prabhu. First off, let's get started with the definition of energy in a relationship. What do you mean by the give and take of energy in a relationship?
Okay, I'll just demonstrate this I'm going to show you a few slides. Pull it up. So we want to examine energy in marriage. And Srila Prabhupada, he referred to this once in a lecture in 1972. Behind every great man is a great woman. This is a fact. Krishna has got also energy, the original Purusha. Radharani, energy, Prakriti. Krishna is engladdened in the presence of Radharani. That is nature. Similarly, a man, he becomes energized if he has got a good wife or good mother. This is the history of the whole world. Any great man in this world, you will find that behind him he has got a good wife or good mother, prakriti energy that energizes him. So in a marital relationship, there's going to be this energy, and it's not just that the husband is getting the wife from the energy, but also there's an exchange between the two of them, but creates kind of a synergistic energization, which we would like to explore a bit. So ultimately, we want to have relationships that are an inspiration to both of us, and not that we're in a stage of opposition. And so we're going to explore a bit how in relationships we can energize each other and avoid the scenarios where we become like opponents. So in a healthy, dynamic relationship, the husband is going to be supporting his wife through things like protection in terms of physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual aspects of life. And also he's going to be giving the wife affection in terms of verbal appreciation, in terms of presence, kindness, openness, and acts of service. And the wife receiving those offerings of affection and love and service and protection, she's going to reciprocate with appreciation, affection, comfort, gentleness, kindness, service, and nurturing. And so that creates a cycle of this healthy reciprocation. And when that dynamic is there in a marriage, it creates this synergy of the couples receiving this energy, a feeling of security, and a feeling of love. So that is a healthy relationship, when that mutual exchange of these different aspects of relationships are being reciprocated in a healthy way. And that can break down sometimes in a marriage if some of these aspects, they're either neglected over time or just not cultivated. So the breakdown in that synergy of the relationship, it can start from either side, the husband or the wife, or it can kind of start simultaneously if they take the relationship for granted. But it can manifest as things like the husband, he maybe stops giving emotional support to the wife. Maybe he stops giving verbal appreciation over time. He stops giving the wife his sense of presence. He stops being, very open with her and honest. And as a result of that, the wife, her reciprocation becomes a little diminished. Maybe she becomes less affectionate. Maybe she becomes less gentle in her dealings. And so when that happens, then gradually this sense of energy and synergy and love becomes diminished, and relationships become more like an opposition than an inspiration. So we don't want relationships like that. We don't want a relationship like Herlinda and Ajian, right, where she says, "You never say you love me," and he says, "I told you the day I married you, if anything changes, I'll let you know." That is not going to work in a relationship. So we'd like to explore this topic today in relationship with what Srila Prabhupada expected from us in terms of our Grihastha ashrams. And it was interesting, Prabhupada, he said once, hero means someone who others want to follow as example of the best type of person. So all of you all become like that, perfect examples of Krishna conscious heroes and heroines. And so how can we do that in the Grihastha ashram? Srila Prabhupada said this in a letter in 1968. We require so many examples of householders to set examples for others how in Krishna consciousness we can live peacefully and sanely even in married life. So Srila Srila Prabhupada, he's putting an onus of responsibility upon all of us to really cultivate healthy, dynamic, thriving relationships. And it's not something we're just doing for ourselves. I mean, we want happiness, we want a happy family, we want that stability. But we can see Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to set examples for society. So our Grihastha ashram, it's not just something that's going on behind closed doors, but it's also very important that behind those closed doors that we have these healthy dynamic relationships where we're actually energizing each other, and by that relationship it gives us the strength and encouragement to go out into the world and do whatever we're doing, whether it's preaching or working or teaching. That facilitates us doing the rest of the activities in our life. So it's an extremely important responsibility for Grihasthas, and it's important that we learn to be aware of that sense of the dynamic of our relationship, how it's facilitating us, how it's giving us that energy, and where we can possibly get a little off track and have that sense of connection energy diminished.
Thank you. Very good. You know, you remind me of something John Lennon said, which was behind every great woman, there's a happy idiot.
Really.
Yeah.
And speaking of happy idiots, no, the characteristics that you laid out seem to be somewhat defined for men and women, but sometimes we see in couples that there's different shifts in personality types. Can you speak to that at all?
Sure.
Different shifts in personality types.
Right, so that, female might be more interested in making a living, or the husband might be more nurturing, things like that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's why it's very important in relationships that there is a very open and honest level of communication and mutual understanding, and that they learn to work together as a team to see what works for the relationship. In relationships, there's a stage in the beginning where everything seems very harmonious. You seem like one, just like our comedic introduction, where you couldn't tell the difference between the two of you. So that was something like the beginning stage in marriage, that you can't really see any difference between you. The second stage in marriage is one of differentiation, where you begin to discover you do have differences, and that can be a little challenging because it can take a lot of investment of energy to learn to integrate those differences into some kind of a harmonious balance in your relationship. So like you're saying, maybe the woman, she is more outgoing, maybe she wants to work, maybe the husband is more nurturing. So over time, they're going to have to learn how to balance their natures into some harmonious working system, and that can be a bit of a growing pain in marriage. It's kind of a normal stage in marriages that sometimes couples end up in a power struggle over who's going to do what and why, and it becomes, in the beginning, it's like we. In that second stage, it's like me versus you. And really what the couple wants to do is work through that stage of differentiation into some kind of synergistic harmony, where they see it's me and you as actually we, and that what's beneficial for the relationship, for the marriage, for Srila Prabhupada's movement. And so that requires a lot of development of Vaishnav skills, such as humility and patience and tolerance and compassion, to be willing to do what it is needed to make those kind of adjustments, to make your differences work for the benefit of the relationship.
Thank you so much for that. Good.
Okay.
Did you have any?
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really helpful and useful information. I like how you broke everything down, these different stages. Thank you.
Oh, I do have a follow-up. And I imagine you said, people have to negotiate. I imagine that even in a good relationship, there are peaks and valleys of that negotiation going on, eh?
Yes. Yeah. Hmm.
So that if you're in a valley, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be in the valley.
Right. Um,
And it helps when you understand that.
yeah. Srila Prabhupada, he wrote us a letter one time. We were on this farm project, and it was Prabhupada described this verse, Matras Pashastu Kuntiya, how the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress comes and goes, and one must learn to tolerate this without being disturbed. And that letter was so prophetic because so many things happened in this community. There was extreme lows, but it was your duty to somehow persevere, and in the ultimate end, that if you try to follow Krishna's desire and instructions, things come out for the better. But sometimes you do have to have that determination to work through things, in your communities and also in your relationships. There can be what seems like low points, but in reality, it's actually a test from Krishna to make you stronger in your relationship.
Thank you so much for that encouragement.
Yeah. Uttama Prabhu, you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
No, you just came on here to look pretty, right?
Yeah.
I'd love for you to tell us how you get energy from your husband. Is that fair?
Sure. I'll say that, in strong marriages, I find that husband and wife share a deep sense of meaning. And maybe before I go a little bit farther, I'm just going to invite anybody else who's listening, if they want to pop in, how they get energized in their relationship. And we can look at that later. Just pop it in the chat, a few little words there. So I find that because we do share a deep sense of meaning in our service and various aspects of our life, that's really, really helpful. It's not that we just get along. We actually support each other's hopes and aspirations, and we've been able to build a strong sense of purpose in our lives together. So one of the things that's very energizing to me is when we're able to share deep, meaningful conversations. It's interesting. We had a couple one time, and they said, "Yeah, our daughter, she always wants DMCs." I said, "What's a DMC?" She goes, "A deep, meaningful conversation." So we said, "Yeah, that's what we like too. We like those DMCs, right?" You feel very energized and uplifted. You get a deep sense of inspiration when you know that your husband understands you and you understand him, and that you can encourage each other and foster and support each other's aspirations. So it becomes really encouraging to work towards your own aspirations when you feel that support and that strength from your partner. And of course, I'm always energized when he carries in the groceries and fills up the tank of the gas tank and things like that. Not only does it give me more energy left over for other things, but I just feel like so loved and supported that makes me want to reciprocate, not only in my relationship with him, but it gives me more energy for all of my other relationships. So I find that reciprocal service can actually be very energizing in a relationship. And another thing that's very nourishing for me, it's actually a lifesaver, is he stays grounded when I overreact. And, because when you overreact, whoa, things can spiral downwards. And if they jump on your boat, then you're really in a mess, So somehow or other, those times when he's just able to stay grounded and, keep me above, that energizes me to go for my higher self and not stay wallowing in my lower self. So I find that, really, really helpful. When my husband was explaining how Srila Prabhupada was very encouraged by his Grihasthas working together, I remember how in the beginning of the movement, Srila Prabhupada used to always be so proud of his Grihastha couples. He said, my spiritual master tried sending out sannyasis, and somehow or other they weren't that effective in preaching Krishna consciousness and spreading it. But somehow or other, my Grihasthas have been able to do what, others couldn't do. And I noticed that, yes, in the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, we get very much energized by Prabhupada's energy and by our practicing Krishna consciousness. But if we don't continue to get energy in our relationships and from other devotees, we really can't sustain that service. So you'll see that Grihasthas, they maybe start out with a bang, but if the energy in their relationships can't be sustained and strengthened, usually they can't keep maintaining their spiritual services. So we actually see that there is that need to give and take in relationships. And when we do it, the result is actually spiritualized relationships where we have spiritualized energy. And I see that that's so dynamic, and that Srila Prabhupada was really appreciative of that. And so I see that we also need to try for that.
Interesting. Yeah, this idea of becoming inspired, and you give some service, and the spouse gets inspired and reciprocates, and it reminds me of Krishna looking at Radharani, and he becomes more attractive because he's so filled with love for Radharani, and then that inspires her, and she takes that in, and then she becomes more attractive, and it's like this give and take back and forth. So that actually, you've had this experience where that practically works. It works just through the reciprocation of service and care that we give each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also I get encouraged if I see him encouraging others. Even that's encouraging to me. It gives me more energy to do the same.
That's great. If you mentioned something there that made me think of this question. How much of a responsibility do I have for my own?
Provide your own energy.
Yeah, to provide myself with my own energy. And when are my expectations too much that I should be getting this from my spouse? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I don't think you can really have any expectations that you're going to get it from your spouse. You have to have that energy yourself. Yeah. And when you have it, you'll be able to give it. And when they have it, they'll be able to give it. Just expecting that you're going to be able to leech off the other person for your energy isn't going to work. I don't think there's any leeches in the spiritual world. It's one of those material world creatures.
Parasites probably do not live in the spiritual world. So wait, what if your spouse is trying to give you energy, right? They're trying, but what they're trying to give you does not give you energy, right? That their attempts do not match what you maybe need.
Then you need to be, first of all, appreciative that they're trying. And then, what was his John Lennon quote? The guy sometimes just doesn't know. So you got to tell him what you need. Prabhu, I know you love to work all day, but what I really need is for you to talk to me when you come home. I love the paycheck, but even more, I'd like you to talk to me. So sometimes we have to clue them in.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yadana, would you have more?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question is going to be to Akavira Prabhu.
Yeah, and just to remind people, I think Leela put just.
Yeah,
put this in the
Leela
chat,
just
too.
put a reminder in the chat.
Okay, the questions can come both ways. Okay.
Yeah. So, Akavira Prabhu, what is an intentional approach Raja Leela Prabhu practices in your marriage that energizes you?
Thank you for that question. Yadavnath Davidasi, as he said. An intentional approach. One in particular approach that Rajalila takes is she's intentionally learned my love language. Primarily, well, there's two primarily, but one in particular is words of affirmation. And then also, I'd like to add, just also who she actually is. And that's kind of like an intentional approach also. So in regards to my love language, words of affirmation, in the beginning of our relationship, I could see that that wasn't so much of a, it wasn't as easy for her to actually express words of affirmation. But as she received training and then observing my behavior, she began to give these words of affirmation. And I know after I received more training, I could see, her actually making this particular effort. And I would, in the beginning, I would appreciate the words that she was expressing, showing signs of her, yes, her appreciation also. And then as the years went by, I would not only appreciate the words, but I would appreciate the effort even more so than the words. Because the effort was a sign that she was actually trying to make a deeper connection with me. And that also inspired me to also express appreciation for her. And so by that meaning, she was an example in her words of affirmation. And then, just being who she actually is. And that relates to another love language, and that's acts of service. And who is she? She's just naturally a loving, caring, compassionate, generous person, devotee, with a tremendous taste for hearing. And that energizes me, just who she actually is. And so when, in regards to generosity, I know that sometimes used to bring up some contention in our relationship because, sometimes persons would refer to me as being a generous person, and I thought I was a generous person. But Leela takes generosity to a whole other level. And we would have debates. Well, yeah, okay, I want to give also, but do we really have to give that much? And she said, well, yes, let's give. Okay, let's give 108 instead of 51. It's like 108. You can do anything with $108. Give 251. Like 251. Do you know how much work I have to do to earn 251? And so even though we don't have so much, she would always give and give. And sometimes give everything that we have. And there's something that she learned early in her devotional life from one of our inspirations, and that was Mother Ladini. And Mother Ladini used to express, the more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. And that was her mantra. And Rajalita took that mantra to heart and practices it in her daily life. Another thing that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj inspired her, that not only should you give, but give that which you appreciate the most. So if you have a sorry and you appreciate it, give it. I haven't gotten there yet, but she actually practices this, and that energizes me and inspires me. And so those areas of generosity, and not only is she generous in giving gifts and Lakshmi, but she's generous even more so in giving her time and energy. And that's something that she's done throughout her entire devotional life. We travel throughout the entire world, and I've expressed this many times. And no matter where we are, and this is something that's taken place for many years. No matter where we are, we always come in contact with at least one devotee that express how much they appreciate how she has assisted them in their spiritual life. And like I said, no matter where we go, and this is something that energizes me, the mood that she has as a selfless servant and service to others. And this reminds and uplifts me, encourages me, and inspires me. And as I said, reminds me that, we are actually servants of the servant, and our lives are based upon service to others and for the pleasure of Guru and Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And so this is how she energizes me in some of the areas.
Thank you so much for that. So it's really useful to see not only how she does things for you that make you feel energized, but just who she is. These are not things that she's doing for you in particular, but you get energy from that appreciation for who she is. That's a really important thing to know, right? Because that's not contingent on her performing something for you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's really beautiful. And I appreciate, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I appreciate also you're talking about those different love languages, because I can relate to that too. We also have different ways of, what is appreciation for one person is not necessarily appreciation for another person, or things along those lines. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so similarly, there are things that Akanta Bhakti does, which are like amazing like that, like you're describing with Leela. And so you walk this line much better than I, because how do you avoid the envy, jealousy route and go immediately for the, wow, that's wonderful, I'm inspired and energized by that? I could very easily go like, why you, not me?
Yeah.
You
know what I mean?
He doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you find a punching bag and then you use the punching bag frequently. No, that's something that became apparent in our relationship very early on. The enviousness, the jealousy, where I actually, could see that. Because Raja Leela came to devotional service many years before I did. And she had relationships, more relationships in the devotional arena. And so in the very beginning, there was like a competition. And as a matter of fact, Partha Prabhu talked about that briefly, how there could be some, tug of war in the relationship. And so at some point in time, I had to make a decision on whether or not we wanted to assume a certain role of a typical husband or play to the strengths in our relationship. And so we made this effort to actually play to the strengths in our relationship. And so it wasn't without a lot of effort, a lot of guidance with my spiritual master and God brothers and God sisters like Jagannath Pandit Prabhu and Chintamani and other devotees, in which I would have to go to and express my agony of going through this, struggle with my false ego. But gradually, understanding that by supporting her in her service to Guru and Gauranga, this is a group effort that we are actually making by supporting her in the endeavors that she was engaged in. Especially in this particular situation in our institution, there weren't so many females that were doing the types of services that she was doing in our organization. And so that was a kind of like almost like a unique position that she had. And so it was continued. It was something that just made a tremendous effort. And again, like I said, I got a lot of help from devotees. I remember one particular devotee in Vrindavan. We were at Govardhan, his Grace Burjan Prabhu. And he said, how do you deal with such a powerful spouse, powerful woman? And I said, I had my own answer, but then I said, well, anything that I say wouldn't be as profound as whatever he could, enlighten me with. And I said, well, Burjan Prabhu, what would you suggest? And he said, be the servant of the servant. And then, he kind of chuckled. He said, and I see that you're trying. So, thank you.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I remember Yadanath and I take turns being jealous of each other. That's, how we get energy.
That's our balance, I guess.
That's our balance. No, I remember early on being very upset. We were talking about something and my looking at him and saying, but I was always the good one, trying to give that up. But thank you so much for your words.
So, Braja Leela, we turn our eyes to you, Prabhu.
Whoa.
So we were talking earlier about, knowing when you're in a valley, we're not going to be in the valley forever, right? The passing of the summer and winter seasons, right?
Yes.
But we do go into the valley sometimes.
Yeah.
So when you find yourself in a valley or a slump in your relationship, what practical strategy or strategies does Akavira Prabhu apply in order to energize you through periods like this?
Yeah, firstly, I want to, wow, I'm just grateful to hear Akavira Prabhu share the ways that I energize him. Some of those things I don't even, I'm just hearing for the first time in some ways, I didn't know. I'm grateful, I'm really grateful. Yeah, I mean, as we all know in Grihastha life, there are times when there's challenges and sometimes we are in the slump and sometimes, yes, the valleys can really be some deep valleys sometimes. Personally, I want to share like what for me takes me into the valley, because I think a lot of times we, everybody has different experiences. All the couples have different experiences. And so for me, some of my valleys are when I'm obsessed, like in my own body shame. That's something that I work with a lot, my body shame. And so I might go into a valley with that for some, whatever, anything, any good thing could trigger that body shame for me, you know what I mean? And so if I'm in a valley with that, then I might shut down. I might be really quiet and not have much to say. And one of the ways that Akavira energizes me is that he's extremely curious. He has this curiosity with me that is, sometimes I get overwhelmed by his level of just wanting to understand what's happening, what's going on with you. So in that ability that he has of having this curious mentality about whatever might be going on for me, he is one of the most attentive listeners that I have met in my life. I honestly, first he has this real sense because he's so very sensitive and so very gentle, as most of you know. And he has this sense of, okay, there's something going on for her. I know there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but and he can sense that. And that sensitivity of wanting to understand what it is, that curiosity drives him to just ask me questions often and being ready to listen. And many times, he has this ability to listen without interrupting. He can listen for long periods of time, and he doesn't. He never gives his opinion. He never makes suggestions. He just like listens. And so by the time I get finished, vomiting whatever is going on with me, I become like healed from that ability that he has to listen. It's kind of like that internal healing is there for all of us, right?
After I give my opinion and suggestions.
He never does that. Sometimes I'm thinking, is he gonna tell me something? Is he gonna suggest something? Is he gonna what, And sometimes I count to I'm gonna count to 20 and see, like, is he gonna say something? He doesn't, he just like, I'm here for you. And I want you to, share whatever is going on in your heart. And I want you to take as long as you want to do that. So of course the time has gotten less over the years. I'm more aware of some of the shames that I might have in terms of trying to be a devotee. And his ability to listen has helped me so much with that. It really energizes me. Other ways that I think of Akavira as being energizing for me is I always think of us as in Grihastha life as how are we whole as a couple. So wholeness for me means understanding ourselves physically, as part of Prabhu shared, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I shared how he energizes me emotionally. Physically, he energizes me by me never have to worry about how things are going to get done in the house. I never have to think about any, like it may take him a little while, but I know that he can do anything. He can do the plumbing, he can do mostly everything. He's just like somebody that's a hands-on person. And that really energizes me to want to learn. For example, he went away a couple of days ago and he said, I'm going to get somebody to come help you with the wood stove. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the wood stove while you're gone. Because I got inspired because he is so capable to do so many things. It just inspires me to want to learn how to do those things. And spiritually, Akavira has the most beautiful voice chanting. He chants on the harmonium and he's the most beautiful chanter. So I absolutely get energized spiritually by his, desire, his selfless, I want to say selfless desire to teach others how to chant on the harmonium, the young kids, and also how he himself is so much connected with chanting the holy names. So for me, that's kind of important as Grihasthas, to be whole. We got to be whole in how we are connecting with each other. That helps us, I believe, to get rid of some of the shame and some of the guilt that we may carry around.
Wonderful. I have this like image of Akavira Prabhu now sitting like Lord Chaitanya for 7 days. You give him your bogus Bhagavatam insights, right?
Yeah.
I think Akanta Bhakti has a follow-up question for you.
Oh yeah, we have a question from the chat that I think would be great for you to answer along these lines. So the question is, how do you help your partner when you see that your advancement makes them insecure?
Nice question, huh?
Who is the question for?
If you would like to answer it, we'd love to hear from you.
I want to defer to Partan Uttama Prabhu's, please.
Okay. Uttama and Partha Prabhu's. How about as a joint question? I'll state it again.
Well, I see that it was asked specifically to you, Vraja Leela. because Akavira was bringing up how you joined before him, and you had some seniority, and so how did he, maybe he was feeling a little bit of insecurity or whatever, and how did you help him with that? That's what the question was, as far as I could understand.
Okay, thank you. Akavir is much more advanced than me. In so many ways. I mean, maybe my physical body has been in devotional life, and yes, maybe I've done some services. Yeah. However, advancement. When we talk about advancement, we use that word in our Krishna consciousness in a loose way. I think sometimes, not wanting to judge that how we might interpret using that word. However, from my experience, advancement is not external. Advancement is very internal. And what I have seen, as I was sharing how Akavira has energized me, those are qualities of a person that's internally connected. He's extremely determined and he's extremely dedicated to Guru and Krishna. And for me, that's advancement. That's somebody that's really advanced. Now, I am understanding in relationships sometimes, there may be a spouse that may think they're advanced. However, my Guru Maharaj once, he said, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he said, anyone that think they're advanced, that they're not really advanced. I mean, Srila Prabhupada says that also. So to be advanced is, I believe that's a word that we need to kind of dissect and understand. Sastrically understand it. We need to understand how that person, when we look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he gives us the different, stages of prema before we can come to prema. And when we're in anartha nivritti, we want to understand where's a person with that? Where are they in their anartha nivritti stage, before they can come to nishtha, to steadiness. And so that steadiness is characterized by certain qualities. And I can't say that, I just believe that as everyone is as Uttama Partha Prabhu is sharing, as Grihasthas, our service is to always encourage and, to remember that we're simply servants of each other, and not that one is more advanced than the other. Even if someone may be, they don't think like that.
I'd like to add that also it's important to have sadhu sangha, devotees that we can actually communicate with and relate to when we have certain challenges that come up in the relationship, not just around advancement or the advanced thinking that we're more advanced in the relationship. But it's important to have sadhu sangha and not expect that our spouse is to actually be everything to us, and we are everything to our spouse. So when those particular doubts or thoughts come, we can see those as an impetus to take shelter of other devotees.
Thank you. Are we unmuted? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you both. So just both of you having spoken, I'd just like to go to Uttama and Partha Prabhu just to see if you have anything you might want to add. You might not, but I figured after they spoke, let's give you a chance if you want to add anything.
Well, there was a time in our relationship when we first moved to Saranagati where my husband still lived in Vancouver, and he would work 10 days on and come back for 4 days and come and go and come and go. And so he was like a heavy duty work schedule. And that facilitated me and our children to live at Saranagati and do direct devotional service. And so I think I was teaching a Bhakti Shastri program and giving different classes. And I kind of noticed that was actually really hard on him. And so I kind of had to dig deep and, realize that he's not it's not that he feels less because I'm doing more. I kind of realized his underlying feeling was that he's kind of feeling left out, and he wishes that he was able to do the same thing. And so somehow or other after that, when you kind of get that realization, that Krishna made some arrangements, and he was able to find some work closer, to where we live. He didn't have to live so far away, and he was able to again, take up giving classes and like that. So sometimes those situations, you have to see really what is the deep underlying feeling of the other person.
And also, if you understand the feelings underlying, and when you're going through those kind of maybe difficult times and circumstances, if you keep a vision on what your long-term goals are, your values and your goals, and it kind of gives you the determination and strength to, work through the valley until you get to the plateau that you're trying to strive for. And it's inevitable in life there's going to be times which will be a little, challenging. Maybe you want to be in a little different position.
And sometimes one's in the peak and the other's in the valley.
Yeah. But you understand you're working towards the goals. And it's like Srila Prabhupada in his statement of purpose. He wanted, through a systematic process of education, to correct the imbalance of values in society to create peace and tranquility. And I know at one point in my life I was really dissatisfied with working, and I just was thinking I did not want to be here. Like Uttama said, there's other things I wanted to do. I wanted to do what we're doing now, but it couldn't happen then. And I just felt trapped, absolutely trapped. And just one day I just decided to just take a step back and take a look at my situation and look at what my real values were. And I could see clearly what I wanted to do and what I wanted to try to achieve for Srila Prabhupada. And I could see that what I was doing in terms of that occupation was facilitating, in a bigger picture, being able to do that in the future. And just having that change of vision completely
Energized you.
Yeah, it really energized me in a way that it's hard to describe. I stopped seeing the gentleman I was working for and my co-workers as, quote, karmis, unquote, like non-devotees. I don't want to be there. I don't want to associate with these people. I started to look at them as, well, they're human beings. Okay, and this job is facilitating me getting where I want to go. And everything totally changed. I became really close friends with those people I was working with. They were very respectful, and actually had a tremendous amount of fun working there. It was a really jovial atmosphere. And after that, Krishna arranged different situations that just within like 1 or 2 years, I was able to wrap up working, go into semi-retirement. So yeah, it's important to have that focus of your goals in those kind of difficult times, because that enables you to see that at times in life, there's things that are going to seem like a burden. But as Prabhupada said, if you balance the values to see them properly, it can become a burden of love instead of the burden of the beast.
Great, Prabhu, yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm coming towards the end of my semester, first semester back in university, and I needed to hear that today. So thank you.
So, Ekanta Bhakti, like when you get in one of your valleys, does he just joke it off, or does he energize you, or what does he do with this? Does he use his humor excuse me, does he use this does he use his humor to energize you, or does it bum you out, or?
I use my humor to energize her, but it bums her out.
I was going to say, if he wants to live to see tomorrow, he's very careful about how much joking he does. But actually, the truth is, it depends. If it's really good, then it works. If it's not so good, he has to do something else.
So mostly she's bummed out.
Then jewelry might be involved, You just never can tell.
Jewelry. She's not one for jewelry. But Partha Prabhu, I'm reminded that Krishna is in charge of timing. And if I'm somewhere that I don't want to be, then I've got to internalize that and think like, well, why? You know, what am I not doing? Where am I not at that I should be at? Which, you know, makes Krishna think that I better be here now. You know, it's a valuable lesson. Thank you. Yeah.
Just going back to Ekanta Bhakti was saying how humor can work sometimes, maybe sometimes it doesn't. It reminded me of something I heard once. It's not so much what you say, but it's who you are when you're saying it. So if you actually say it with compassion and love, it might be like a sarcastic joke, but if the person that's saying it is acting out of love and compassion, it can have that compassionate effect, even though it comes across in the guise of sarcasm, a sarcastic joke. But if you say a sarcastic joke from you are sarcastic, it's going to be disaster.
And that's exactly right. If if I'm in a bad place, if I'm in a valley, and his joke is meant to distract because he doesn't want to discuss something, then it's not going to work. But if it's I'm just bummed because yes, I still have to go to work on Monday, and he knows it and he feels bad, but he wants to try to make me feel better, then it will work. So there's all those like nuances.
Yeah.
And yeah, that stuff comes with time and communication, right?
Mm-hmm. So how does she energize you, Yarunath?
Oh, just in every way. You know, mostly, it's when we connect in a sense of play with each other. So I am a person. I mean, I put on that like I'm just joking all the time, but that's not really the case, of course. And even when things are quite serious and need to have some gravity to them, I like to bring a sense of play to situations, and that can mean a wide range of things. And her willingness to go there with me, or sometimes for me, does energize me. Yeah. And sometimes it can just be, going for a walk in the woods and having a playful spirit together. It doesn't have to be some big thing. These sometimes small, sometimes subtle things can bring a lot of energy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, and it's funny because people tend to think because we work together, doing some comedy, that, oh, that must be so much fun. And sometimes it can be a lot of fun. Sometimes if we're both in that playful mood, then it can be a lot of fun. But sometimes it's just work and we're getting on each other's nerves. So,
like anybody else, we've got to navigate that stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But thank
And that's
you.
that when we get on each other's nerves, in a bigger picture, it's actually energizing us because it's helping us to develop the tenets of which Lord Chaitanya was teaching, to develop humility, tolerance, and patience. So those
Right.
kind of low points are opportunities for growth.
That's right. And actually, Partha Prabhu, you just provided us with a perfect segue into another question from the chat box. And I'd like to go a little off script here because we're not supposed to do this, and I hope we don't get in trouble. So our focus is with the two couples here, as we mentioned. Jagannath Pandit Prabhu and Chintamani Prabhu, they are here. They are members of the GVT, but they're taking a back seat tonight, just for their own edification, for their own sense of physical and mental well-being. But they're here just to support the rest of us, and we for that we appreciate you for that very much. If it's all right, I would like to actually just give you this one question. Would you both be up for maybe tackling one question for us? Okay, thank you. This is from the chat box. It says, can conflicts energize instead of drain? I think Partha Prabhu just gave you a ramp there, and maybe you can expound on that.
Wow, that's a good question. And ultimately, just like any test that we get, we've all been through school. And at Kanta Bhakti, you mentioned that you mentioned school. Well, we're given tests, and the tests aren't meant to fail us. Tests are opportunities for us to show our skill, our growth, ultimately to show how much we've learned. So when there is a conflict, it's an opportunity. And just like in any battle, you may become wounded, you may be weak, you may be strong, you may win some battles, but it's a constant war, within ourselves, with Maya, and our own minds. So our most intimate partner gives us the opportunity to look at ourselves, because they reflect ourselves back to us in our interactions with each other. So when there's a conflict, it is an opportunity. One of the things that my Guru Maharaj says, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, is that every interaction is either a cry for love or an expression or an extension of love. And so in a conflict situation, it takes two. And both have needs in the situation. And so it's an opportunity for one of us to tune into, if not both of us, to tune into the needs of the other, so that we can be of more service in that situation. And there's times where we're better at it, and there's times where we're not so good at it, and sometimes we're both good at it in the same moment, and sometimes we're both not, or sometimes one of us is. But the bottom line is that we can learn from each situation, knowing that we are allies, as Partha Prabhu was mentioning, not enemies, And so in a state of weakness in that time, just the other day, it was a couple of days ago, Chintami and I had a lot going on. We're both stressed. We had a lot of things we were trying to accomplish. And so we had a meeting for ourselves. We had a Zoom meeting, and I also had to go to work. But before that, I was going to go out, and I had to run 3 errands, So had my coat on, had my receipts to return this and go here and go there and everything. About to head out the door, and Chintami's like, okay, can we talk? And I'm like, well, wait a minute, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to drop this off, I got to do this. How can I do that? And, us meet and be ready for the Zoom meeting and then go to work. So it's like, how? What? So we didn't agree at that moment. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go, take care of this business, and I'll be right back. Do you want to finish the rest, or do you want me to?
Well, you can finish.
Okay, so at a certain point, I was like, she really needed this support right then and there. So I pulled up a chair, took off the coat, and said, let's talk. Then I'll go take care of the other stuff. And so when that happened, everything just like flowed. I mean, there was so much synergy and energy that was flowing between us, and everything went so smooth the rest of the day. You know, so those are opportunities, but it could have turned the other way around. I could have just said, "Well, look, I'm going. I already have this all set up. I will be back. Forget it." You know. But when we could try to tune into the other person's needs, then you know, then you could see the call for service is right there in front of us.
And if I can add, I think something that's critical in the example that Jagannath is sharing is that in order for couples to best receive the opportunity that conflict provides for growth and energization is to practice some of the wonderful things that we've heard today in terms of how we can be intentional about fortifying ourselves, energizing ourselves spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, and then practicing that intentionally with our spouse. Because as you build that foundation of that level of personal investment and commitment, and that level of investment with your spouse, then when conflicts arise, one, you have a stronger foundation in which to negotiate those conflicts. And you also have a certain lens where you're motivated to try to do that because you've been filling your emotional bank account or your couple's bank account. You've been making deposits there, which can serve as fortification to be able to see those things as opportunities and to be able to make choices where the opportunities can come from them. So I think that point is very, very important. And as Yadunath said earlier, for like self-care needs, Jagannath and I have kind of taken a backseat. Well, I mean, more so me, because I have some health issues. And so self-care is also very important because part of ways that we energize ourselves is to be aware of the levels of our own batteries. So it's important for me to know when I need to recharge, what I need to do to recharge, when I have something to give, or when I can choose to give a bit more than I think I have to give. And then for me to also commit to try to be aware of where my husband's battery is at. And sometimes I'm not so good at that. For example, sometimes when he comes home from work, I may see him and I want to just talk to him and share all the things that happened in the day. And to remember, okay, he may need to recharge his battery a bit. His job is really intense. So instead of just like busting in his room and like sharing everything you want to say, give him some time to recharge his battery. And then he'll be more open to hear what you have to say. And that also teaches me some level of emotional self-control and verbal self-control. And that practice of stillness and internality then reinforces intentionality to recharge my own battery, because I can discharge my battery just by talking all day long. So just being able to be quiet and charge my battery makes me more grounded, and I can give more, and I could be more attuned to when other people's batteries need charge. So those are some thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So can I just follow up with that for a moment?
Sure.
Are there things in particular that will perpetuate negative energy that we should stay away from? Like certain things that are just like, yeah, okay, just stay away from that stuff. When we're trying to give good energy with each other and stay away from the bad.
You mean things that we do or things that
No, I know, because I don't imagine you do these things, but things that you might have come across that like I imagine if somebody is in a bad place, fault finding could lead them to bringing negative energy,
Mm.
instead of getting that synthesis of positive energy. So are there any things in particular that you might think of that it's like, okay, try to stay away from those things, and that'll be helpful.
Mm.
Ultima Prabhu has her hands up. Should we go to her
Yeah,
first
please.
and then come back to
Yes, please.
Okay,
Please.
great. Ultima Prabhu, what would you like to share?
Well, we found in all the couples that we deal with, and even when you deal with children, when we get in a state where we're emotionally escalated, we're usually not able to access our higher self. And in those situations, we just give off negative energy. That's when we say the things that we should never say, that remain in our spouse's heart for many years. Those are when we do the things we shouldn't do. And so that is the time when we need to take the responsibility that this is not good energy. It may be essential energy in some situations, your fight or flight, but it's not applicable in this situation. And so we need to really strengthen that ability to notice when we are emotionally escalated and to self-soothe and take the break. And only we can do that. Maybe you can set up, a little bit of a signal between each other that when you think either one of you is too escalated to deal properly, you can do your whatever, and you just have everything stops. You go, you chant Hare Krishna in a secluded place for 20 minutes. You relax. You don't think about all of the armor that you're going to shoot them back with when you get back together. You forget about the situation. You relax, and then you come back, and then you can have access to your more reasoning, higher, God-given powers in human life that we can utilize to energize each other in a proper way. Because quarrels are not bad. They bring up, sometimes when you work through them, you do become closer together. It's when you don't repair them well that the negative energy becomes all pervading and starts leading for divorce. So we have to understand that and take the responsibility to self-soothe and be in our higher state.
I could just share something about the evolution of our conflict resolutions and also the point about not escalating. I think at the beginning of our marriage, we were both very much conflict avoidant, which works because you don't have conflicts because you don't deal with it.
But you don't deal with anything.
Right, but then you don't deal with the things you need to deal with. So at a certain point, we actually learned the skills how to actually communicate constructively. And these things used to come up and we'd start talking and it never wouldn't get escalated, but we were able to work things out just by having a dialogue. And in terms of energy, getting energy from the conflict, our experience used to be when we'd work through some issue, after we worked through it,
We'd be having a DMC.
yeah, we'd have these really deep, meaningful conversations, and we'd like stay awake for hours, like just having this deep conversation. And so we never really had an escalation in terms of really like getting extremely worked up until a few days after our 50th wedding anniversary.
Took us 50 years to get going. We're slow starters.
and something happened. There was some issue that I needed to share something that was really important. I get a point across, so I had to quote the source of the information. And for her, that was like a violation of trust. Anyway, she just completely blew up.
How dare you share that?
I'd never seen that before. She was like so angry. And I was actually getting really escalated too. And so, I mean, I know the scale is you're supposed to de-escalate, but I was actually thinking, okay, I just got to run with this for a few minutes to see where it's going to go.
And he wanted to de-escalate. I said, don't you dare go away. You have to stay here and fight this out. I wouldn't let him go self-soothe. Doing all the things we preach against and teach against.
But we did kind of de-escalate. And then we sat down and started talking about it. And we just both realized we're really under a lot of stress, especially COVID and different things going on in life,
family
and
dynamics, and
just kind of piled up on everything. It became like a trigger for a bunch of small things, and just talking through it, then it all just dissipated.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
So Jagannath, Chitamani, did either of you want to contribute there?
I'll just say in those situations where there's conflict or it's challenging, it's challenging, high energy, so on, like provoking or triggering situations. Those, because often sometimes, especially for men, we'll feel like, well, we got to tolerate our mates, they have so many emotions. We got to sit here and go through all this, hear them out and everything. But really, it's about tolerating our own emotions in those situations, not about tolerating her and hers. So the more I'm able to tolerate what's going on inside of me, then I'm able to be more of who I really am, which is das anu das, para duki, kripa and booty, being able to feel the miseries of another person and happiness, where we're really connecting and experiencing all of whatever is going on rather than resisting and cutting off what actually is, which is really important for the person that Krishna has given me to love in such an intimate way, which is purifying me, which is helping me to be more of a servant, which is taking away, eating away at my false ego, and so on. And it's wonderful to see the unfoldment of your partner over years, because you see the growth, you see when there's, wow, she's making such effort and advancement, you can see it, you can see the surrender and the developing more Vaishnava qualities. And they say that familiarity breeds contempt, but actually, I like the word that Leela said about Akavira, that he's curious. Well, if you're curious, you can actually see the unfoldment of your partner in their advancement in devotion service. And that's becoming, and that's, as it's coming, it's unfamiliar. And that breeds the opposite of contempt, It's beautiful, it's wonderful. It's like a lotus that's opening up, So it's so wonderful, to have a partner that you can make progress in the journey, together in devotional service.
And, and that's one of the foundational ways that we energize each other is ultimately, as was said, seeing our relationship as servant of the servant of the servant, and knowing that ultimately this person is, in Krishna's eyes, it's like sometimes I'll talk to Jagannath and I may have a difference of opinion, and then I'll think and I'll say, well, I'm saying this as your God sister. I just want to share this with you, because then I remember in that moment, like, yeah, he's my husband, and it's the role, and we have these attachments, but ultimately I love him as my God brother, and I love him as another spirit soul. And that's one of the greatest ways we can energize each other, is to really pray to Krishna to ultimately be grateful for this soul who we've been blessed to spend time with and to work together with, to assist us on our journey back home, back to Godhead.
If I may, I'd like to share something, Jagannath and Ekanta Prabhu, just quickly. Something that I've experienced, in terms of our own relationship and also teaching conflict resolution mediation, is that oftentimes people are not aware of their own style of how they deal with conflicts, and especially in relationships. A lot of times the couple, they may not know each other's style of how they handle conflicts. And so it was really nice for me to hear Partha and Uttama, just in open disclosure, that their style of dealing with conflict was to avoid, which is what most people do, right? They avoid, they shut down, they go away, they don't want to talk. However, you can have in a relationship somebody that really has a style of confrontation that's just going to be in your face, because that's their style of how they deal with conflict. And so if we don't learn the tools of dialoguing, then we could stay stuck and in the valley if we don't know the style of our partner. So it's really important first to know our own style of how we deal with conflicts, and then really explore what is my partner's style of dealing with conflicts, so that we can get, whatever the tools that might be necessary to get us to that place of dialogue. Because Uttama, what she said to Partha Prabhu is, no, you're not going to avoid. You're not going to go. You're going to sit here. We're going to deal with it. So she knew his style, right? And he obviously wasn't into confrontation. So they worked it out. So I found that to be like really important when we talk about conflicts.
Thanks for chiming in with that, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Very
Beautiful
nice.
answers.
Yeah, beautiful answers all. And thank you, Jagannath and Chitamani, for allowing us to bring your beautiful energy into it, although that wasn't supposed to necessarily happen. So there's just a little bit of time left, and there's just one question left in the chat box, which I would, it's not really on topic, but I thought maybe you could briefly honor the question, because it's, I think, from a young person here. And Akavira, maybe I'll just go to you, if you don't mind. The question is, when do you know you are ready to switch from student to householder life? So again, not really on topic, but I think it's probably important for this devotee. If you could just briefly address this, we'd appreciate it. Announcements and our poem, and we'll wrap things up.
Okay, I'll say something briefly, and then we'll ask other devotees to give their input, because this is an important question. We talked about this earlier, the importance of sadhu sangha, that's guidance, having persons that we trust and can help us to do honest introspection and evaluate our current needs, where we are in our particular lives as far as our, our basic needs, and having that guidance is extremely important. There's no cookie cutter answer to this particular question. And so, yes, guidance and guiding us through introspection to see what our needs are at that particular time. You want to chime in?
Yeah, as Akavira said, mentorship. Yeah, and yes, premarital understanding as you said what your needs are, and really exploring what is the vision? What will be your vision in a marriage? Every marriage has a vision, and we could say it's a goal. What would you want your goal to be in marrying, especially if you're a student? As a student, you have a goal while you're a student. So similarly, marriage is an institution. What is your goal? What is your vision?
Great. Uttama, Partha, anything on that topic or no? No? Okay. Yeah, Partha Prabhu?
As Akavira was saying, it's very important to be introspective, and Leela was saying to really understand your vision of what marriage is going to look like, because you want to know that clearly, so you can express that to whoever you might want to marry in the future, so that you can make sure you understand each other's visions and values about marriage. And for someone who's just considering marriage, we have one resource on our website. It's a list of, I think, almost 200 questions that either an individual can go over to see kind of what their values are about marriage, or a couple that's just getting together, they can discuss those things. That can be very helpful in seeing that, am I ready for marriage? And do I have the skills necessarily to do what it takes to have a healthy marriage? So that can be a good resource to go to. And if you do consider getting married and find a prospective partner, the Grihastha Vision Team has a resource to offer premarital mentoring and education to help couples make that transition into marriage as smooth as possible.
So on our website, there's one under premarital, there's one posting on am I ready for marriage? And then there's the other one with the premarital questions once you've found someone.
Great. So a lot of resources to be found at VaishnavResources.org. VaishnavFamilyResources.org.
You're forgiven.
Thank you. We just have a couple minutes left. We do want to say a couple things. If you would like to find out more about Grihastha Vision Team events, please put your email or contact information in the Google form that's provided in the chat box here. We very much appreciate you joining us today. Again, this is the Heart and Soul Connections book, which is co-written by all the members, most of the members of the Grihastha Vision Team. Chapter by chapter, it's a really wonderful practical guide, and this can be found at VaishnavFamilyResources.org. We are, and there's a link for it right there. So I think there's some there's some debate as to whether or not we have access to our signature poem.
Yeah, I don't think we have the signature poem on video right today, so I think it may need to wait until next time. But
No, we have it for a screen share, and we're ready to say it with you.
Okay.
So we'll just post that for you now.
okay, so
And you can all chat along. You can all read it along with us while you're muted. It makes for a more cohesive read. All right. We're in this together through good times and stormy weather. We're willing to do the work it takes. Be a team, pray, make less mistakes. We want to get better
together.
with faith in Krishna that our marriage will be great. We're learning to better communicate, to speak what we want with respect, to listen to get the most effect. We want to get better together. Our goal is to be each other's best friend, to get skills so our relationship won't have to end. Tools to manage our time, children, and money, to avoid the mess and go after the honey. We want to get better together. Trust, forgiveness, respect, yes. Lying, cheating, fighting, no. With consideration, cooperation, and devotion, we can flow. We want to get better together.
Hey,
Krishna.
thank you very much. So the links are all there in the chat box there. If anyone's inspired to make a donation to continue the wonderful work the Grihastha Vision Team is doing, please go to the website, VaishnavFamilyResources.org. Link is in the chat box. We want to thank the Grihastha Vision Team, especially Anutama and Partha and
Utama, not Anutama.
what did I say? Did I say Anutama? Anutama is one of the founding members, right? So we thank him too. Leela, Akavira, also Jagannath and Chitamani for taking part. Thank you all you Prabhus. Leela on tech, thank you so much for your expertise. And thank you all for joining us. We will be we do these every few months. Just go to the Facebook page and find out when the next one is. The Grihastha Vision Team is coming again to you. So be well, everybody. Chant Hare Krishna, be happy, and love as much as you can. Hare Krishna.
And one last thing, a big dynamic
Group hug
Group
for
hug.
everybody.
Big
here.
group e-hug.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right,
Hare
Leela.
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Haribo. In the meeting?
Yes, I think you have to. And then Facebook.
Yeah.
The D is